welcome.
Back to On Air with Tony Sweet. I'm Eddie Connor.
I'm Walt Lusk.
And I'm Tony Sweet.
And we want to introduce you to our next guest. Now, in the first hour, we had Zuni elder and ancient astronaut theorist Clifford Mahudi talking about star people and the Zuni nation. Now we have author, independent researcher Gary A. David, who has been intrigued by the American Southwest since his initial trip there in 1987. The following year, he lived for 6 months in northern New Mexico, where he studied archaeological ruins and rock art. In 1994, he moved to Arizona and began an intensive study of the ancestral Pueblo people and their descendants, the Hopi. And because of Gary's incredible journey, he wrote the book, The Orion Zone, Ancient Star Cities of the American Southwest. So please put your hands together and welcome our guest, Gary A. David.
Yay! Gary David, how you doing?
Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, welcome to the show. And first of all, the Orion Zone, I have not had a chance to read it. I've ordered it. I can't wait to read it. So for the people out there that don't know the book, haven't heard of the book, give us a little rundown of the book before we get really into the Hopi nation and the Hopi tradition.
Sure, yeah. I started back in about 1997. I've been in Arizona since '94. And in 1997, I was going up to the Hopi reservation to watch some Kachinas dance. Of course, the Kachinas are the spirit messengers of the Hopi. And the Hopi perform dances every year, starting in the spring in the village plaza, and then they dance all day long. And this goes through the summer, and after the summer solstice and into July is when the Kachinas go back to their home, which is the San Francisco Peaks in Arizona.
Right.
So I was going up to one of these Kachina dances just to watch it, and I had just read the book by Robert Bauval called The Orion Mystery. And he says that he has the theory that the three major pyramids on the Giza Plateau correspond to the belt stars of Orion.
Yeah, Orion's belt.
And a lot of people know about this theory that
Right.
it's highly contested, but there's some good evidence to point to the fact that these pyramids were constructed in order to reflect the pattern of the belt stars.
Right.
So, I was driving up from the south towards the Hopi mesas, and the Hopi live on three primary mesas. They call them first, second, and third mesas. And they've been up there living in these pueblos or a stone apartment buildings, you could call it. They've been up there since at least 1100 AD, living continuously up there on these three mesas. And, I was just gazing off into the distance and thought, well, maybe there's an Orion correlation right here in Arizona. So, I put that in the back of my mind and went up to watch the Kachinas dance up there. And then when I got home, I got a map of Arizona, and then I got out a star chart. And I found that there was a Hopi ruin site or village corresponding to each major star in the constellation Orion.
Wow.
The belt stars were reflected by those three primary mesas where they still live. And there are other ruin sites in Arizona, in northern Arizona and central Arizona that reflect the other stars in the constellation Orion. So there's a one-to-one correspondence between the sky and the earth. And this just, blew me away. It was just an uncanny coincidence, if it is a coincidence, that, the sky reflected the earth so precisely. And I thought there must be something going on here. So I began years of research, going to each one of these sites and, looking at the various aspects of each site and the stellar aspects of each site. And, I've been writing ever since. The first book came out in 2006, and I'm still putting out books. I just had a book come out called The Mirrors of Orion. Star Knowledge of the Ancient World. This came out just this year.
Oh, great! I can't wait to read that one too.
So you can get all these on Amazon.com, or the first 4 books are available from Adventures Unlimited Press.
First, I want to ask you, when you said ancient star cities, what is that? What is
Well,
an ancient star cities?
they're star shrines or cities, these villages that the Hopi built
Uh huh.
in order to correspond to a given star.
Huh.
For instance, the site of Wupatki, there's a number of ruins north of Flagstaff called Wupatki. It's a national monument right now. You can go to it and visit it. And this corresponds to the star Bellatrix. It's the left shoulder of Orion. It's basically a star map that's brought down to Earth, and you can go to all these sites, and they're basically villages, but I call them star cities. They wanted to commemorate the particular star in the sky, corresponding to this particular village that they built, and this pattern took quite a while to build. It took about 300 years to complete this whole pattern.
Wow.
And the Hopi are famous for migrating around the Southwest. They'd build a certain village. Some of these villages were fairly large. For instance, Chaco Canyon in New Mexico was one of the largest. You could call it a city. It's a cosmopolitan actual city that had a number of different pueblos or these complexes. One of the complexes had 800 rooms
Wow.
in this one structure.
That's a
So
palace.
it was a major undertaking.
Well, to hear stuff like that most people would not even guess that, we think of, teepees and,
Yeah, we have a limited
yeah,
imagination.
us
with
white
it.
people. But that's fascinating to know that they had such a great wealth of knowledge to put this type of structure together.
And the stonework involved was amazing. They quarried all this stone, and you look at the stonework, and it's just impeccable. They spent so much time perfecting, the architecture of the places, and the beams, the wooden beams that held the roofs. They carried these from over 50 miles away. They
Wow.
carried these huge roof beams, 15, 20 feet, 25, 30 feet long, big pine trees that they carried from the mountains down to this Chaco Canyon, which is sort of a desolate area, and it wasn't too much better than it is now. And you go out there and you say, well, why did they build here? There's kind of a dry wash that floods in certain periods of the year, and they use kind of check dams or small dams to catch the runoff from the cliffs. But there's no major river running through Chaco Canyon, so you wonder why they built this particular
Where they did.
city there. It
Yeah.
was a city, and from my research, I found that this corresponds. This place, Chaco Canyon, corresponds to the star Sirius in the constellation Canis Major. And Sirius is the brightest star in the heavens, and Chaco Canyon is the largest ruin site in the Southwest.
What was your truth? What got you into wanting to study the Hopi, the stars, or just Native American or Indian American Indian
Yeah,
period?
what triggered it?
Yeah, what triggered that?
Oh, we have to go back quite a few years, more years than I care to to admit to. But
You mean the last
I
century?
was living in South Dakota, and I was teaching on the Pine Ridge Reservation, teaching the Lakota Sioux. And I met a woman named Charlotte Black Elk, and she's the great granddaughter of the famous Nicholas Black Elk, who wrote Black Elk Speaks. It's a great Native American classic. And at the time, she was talking about this star map on a buffalo hide that she had, and this star map was comprised of a number of constellations. There was the Pleiades, the Taurus, Orion, and Sirius. These major, huge. It was a huge Lakota constellation, and they called it a celestial buffalo, or a buffalo in the sky. And it corresponded to certain places in the Black Hills of South Dakota. Now, the Black Hills are sacred to the Sioux, to the Lakota Sioux, and it's kind of the center of their world. And they would make migrations to a certain point in the Black Hills, corresponding to a certain star in this constellation, and they would do a certain ceremony at the given time of year. They start in the spring and kind of migrate around the Black Hills, and they'd end up at Devil's Tower, which of course was made famous by Close Encounters
That's
of
the
the
third
Third
kind,
Kind.
yeah.
But they'd have a Sundance there at this Devil's Tower, but they would make this annual migration commemorating this celestial buffalo in the sky. So, this idea of as above, so below, that that was that was born true to me. My truth was, I realized that there's something going on, that people are creating these sites, these sacred sites, and doing ceremonies. These native peoples are doing ceremonies to commemorate, the sky people, or the star ancestors. So, that got me started on this whole idea of, on earth as it is in heavens. The Bible says.
Right.
My question for you, Gary, is what is the most unusual or strange or abnormal experience you've ever had while you've been doing all of this?
Well, I once had a near-death experience, which was I was again up at a Kachina dance, and some strange things were going on. Like, I parked where I shouldn't have necessarily parked, and I got a lot of bad looks and bad vibes. So I moved my car very fast, and the Kachina dancers were gathered between the dances, and taking a rest. But I think some sorcery was going on there. And yeah, there is sorcery and negative vibrations uh, in on the reservation, on the Navajo and Hopi reservations. So I think I caught some of that, because I basically I went home the next day, and it collapsed, and I was taken to the hospital, and I saw my body float up above. I felt myself float up above my body, and they were working on me, and I felt totally at peace. But I didn't enter the tunnel. I just blacked out and woke up in the hospital a couple of days later. But I think it was a result of being on the reservation and coming in contact with some negative influence. So, it's not all truth and light, and there is some darkness up there that you have to be wary of. You have to watch it, and there are negative forces and sorcery going on up there on the reservation.
Well, yeah, the duality of the universe.
Oh, sure,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
There's the light and the dark, and it kind of balances out, because there are a lot of positive things, like the Hopi carrying on, and the Zuni as well. You talked to my friend Clifford
Yes.
the last hour. I heard a bit of that, and his people, the Zuni, are carrying on the same sorts of dances. They have Kachina dances as well on the Zuni reservation, and these people are doing this against a lot of odds, because the world is kind of being torn apart. It's
Yes, it is.
the Native American world, especially because the people have to live basically in two worlds if they want to hold on to their native tradition. They have to kind of accept some of the ways to survive that we think of, getting a job and doing the workaday thing every day, but they're trying to carry on their ceremonies. There's a lot of preparation
Yeah.
for ceremonies. It takes just to feed some of the relatives. It's just a daunting task, and to carry on the ceremonial cycle is really onerous, and I think some of the people are falling away. Some of the people aren't learning the language, but a lot of the young Hopi and Zuni are learning the native language and keeping the old ceremonies alive. And it's good to see that tradition being carried on. The kachinas being dolls being carved. The Kachina dolls, of course, are these representing these spirit messengers, and they're basically carved to teach the children the different forms of these Kachinas, because there are so many different forms of Kachinas. And if you go to a Kachina dance, and you can still go to these dances, they wear these bizarre masks of different sorts. Some are kind of round, or others are like dome shaped or helmet shaped, and there some have slits for eyes, or just goggle eyes. They're all different sorts of these spirits, these spirit messengers, and some of them actually do look like space people. They look like they descended from the stars.
I'm sorry. And speaking of looking like they descended from stars, I'm really curious about what you spoke about in some of the literature that we were reading over about the ant people.
Oh yeah, the ant people are part of the Hopi tradition, mythological tradition. The ant people supposedly saved the Hopi from destruction during two different world cataclysms. The Hopi have an idea of a cyclical time, just like the Maya. And the Hopi and the Maya, they've had relations for centuries, if not millennia. They've exchanged both goods and ideas. Between southern Mexico and Central America and the American Southwest. So the Hopi have this idea of that time is a cycle, that you go through one age, and then that world is destroyed. Then you go through another age, and that world is destroyed.
Mm.
And basically, it's an idea of devolution. The world just kind of grinds down, and things get worse and worse, and people go against the ways of the creator, and finally that world is destroyed.
I believe you said there's what, like nine cycles, and we're they believe they're about at the end of the fourth one.
Yeah, there are a total of nine. I'll go through the worlds because each one was destroyed in a different way. Okay, the first world, the people were very much in tune with the animal world. It was kind of like the movie Avatar, where
Right.
there was
Yes.
Right.
complete harmony between the environment, the ecosystem, and the people. They were totally in tune with their environment. The Nagi, or whatever you call them. It was the first world was like that, but slowly the people fell away from this ecological view of the world, and began to be greedy, and so forth, and going against the ways of the creator. And so the creator destroyed the first world with fire. Now, this came perhaps in the form of an asteroid strike or a cometary strike. And, there are scientific uh, beliefs, or theories that say that a comet hit North America in about 9500 BC. So, this could be totally scientifically proven that, the world as we know it, at least in North America, was destroyed by fire, this first world. And then the second world started to develop, and it wasn't quite as in tune with the environment as the first world. But slowly again, things got worse and worse, and people strayed from the true path, the path with heart. They began to be what the Hopi called two-hearted people.
Hmm.
They didn't have one heart, they had two hearts. So they were kind of devious, and they were, out for their own ego or their own selves. And that world was destroyed. The second world was destroyed by ice. Okay. Now,
Hmm.
during the destruction of these two global cataclysms, the ant people took the virtuous Hopi, the Hopi who weren't straying from the path, and they took them down into caverns and caves in the Grand
Grand
Canyon.
Canyon. Yeah.
Right, and they survived down in this in the caves by they started to sprout beans, and the ant people showed them how to sprout beans, and they have a dance. It's called the bean dance or the Puamu ceremony every year to commemorate the time when the ant people showed the Hopi how to survive in these caverns by sprouting these beans. And they still sprout beans in what's called a kiva, which is an underground ceremonial prayer chamber. Okay, and they use these kivas. They go down through a ladder in the roof, and they go partially underground or fully underground, depending on the kiva. And they do ceremonies down there. But you know the ant people help them survive, and I've seen rock carvings of these ant people. I've done a lot of research on petroglyphs or rock carvings
Hmm.
and rock paintings, and they're all over the Southwest. And some of these creatures are like half human and half insect like they have antenna coming out of their heads, and they have really kind of spindly arms and legs, and they
Hmm.
they look rather like ants, but they're standing up on two legs. So they try to depict these ant people who are basically benevolent and help them out, help the Hopi survive these two different cataclysms.
So when you first started getting into the study of the Hopi itself, did you go and get the opportunity? And I know you have by now, but get the opportunity to see these hieroglyphs and be go with someone that explained what they were?
Oh, sure, yeah, yeah. There are people that will show you around, and I met grandfather Martin Geshwesioma. He's one of the few surviving elders. He's in his 90s now,
Wow.
and he's rather hard of hearing, but he was the keeper of what they call Prophecy Rock. Okay, and it's kind of a visual depiction of Hopi prophecy, and Hopi are very big on prophecy and prophesizing the future.
I think I'm showing a picture of it right now for people
Oh,
that's
good,
yeah.
great, great. Yeah,
Online.
and he would explain, the various symbols on prophecy rock.
Is there a way that you can kind of describe a few of them?
Yeah, there's a down towards the bottom of the rock. There's a
Hmm.
figure that looks like he's holding up the rest of
Right.
holding a vertical staff in his left hand.
Correct. Right.
Okay, and he in his right hand he's got a bow and arrow. Okay, and it's pointing downward, which means it's pointing to the underworld. Okay,
Wow.
now that there's the vertical staff that goes up to a square,
Right.
and that kind of represents a pueblo or a village.
Hmm.
Okay, that's the Hopi life.
Oh, okay.
And you find this. I found this symbol, this square symbol, in many different cultures. The ancient Egyptians would represent a town by using a square. And
Oh,
so
town square.
and Sumerians the same. They would use this particular symbol to represent a town or a village or land or something like that. Okay, so this is the Pueblo. Now there are two lines going off to the going kind of upward diagonally.
Yes, it looks like it almost looks like a car with two wheels.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, these wheels, they supposedly represent different events in our history. The first World War and the Second World War.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and the Hopi predicted the Second World War before it happened. And that's really why the Hopi prophecy has come to light, because they, like hundreds of years ago, they were talking about a gourd of ashes falling on the earth.
Hmm.
And, many people would die because of this gourd of ashes. And when the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and
There you go.
Nagasaki,
Yep, there it is.
the Hopi elders said, well, our prophecies are coming to pass. What we've known about this for a long time, and they're coming to pass. So, we've got to tell the world about, we've got to not be so insular and try to tell the world at large about, our Hopi prophecies. So, a number of people have come forth talking about Hopi prophecies, but there are many different, prophecies. But this particular image of on Prophecy Rock, it has those three circles
Right.
in a line, and there's one line dividing the second and the third circle, and you have an upper line going forth, and there are a number of people who look like they have their hands joined,
Right. It looks like we
and
hands
the
across America or something like
yeah, and then
that.
the fourth figure, it looks like it has two heads or something. It's kind of bizarre. And Grandfather Martin talked about these two particular lines. They're parallel lines, and they go off diagonally from this square. The lower line is the true way of the Hopi. That's what he said. And you can see the one figure, and there's looks like a little cane or something, but it's really a corn stalk.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
and the
I see that.
Hopi man is tending the corn
Hmm.
on the lower line. Now, the upper line, the people are just kind of all together. They're probably looking at their cell phones or something like that. And 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 then the line kind of zigzags and it ends. Okay, the line ends in space, and that's where the world is headed. If we don't follow the ways of the Creator, we're just going to kind of end up floating in space, or in chaos. And I hope you have a word for this, koyanaskatsi, that the world in chaos,
Hmm.
world out of balance. And the lower line, it kind of follows around the side of the rock and it keeps on going. But the upper line kind of zigzags and just stops in midair. So the lower line is symbolically the way that people should go. So people should be close to the earth, not destroy the earth, not take more than you need to live, and
Hmm.
so forth. And Grandfather Martin, he talked about this line, this bottom line going around the side of the rock, and he said some days he'd go to the rock, and the line would disappear, and he
Oh,
was
wow.
kind of worried about it. And then other days he'd go to the rock, and the line would be back. This lower line would be back. So
Wow.
It kind of
you know,
reminds me
I,
of palm reading. You know how each line,
Lifelines
yeah,
and stuff.
lifelines. It reminds me of kind of a lifeline of the earth.
oh sure, yeah, yeah. And this is the kind of telling how it's going to end. I think it could end at the upper line, if we continue on our destructive ways. Or it could, we could keep going along that lower line.
A while ago, you were talking about the 9 cycles, and we talked about the first cycle being that part of the civilization as we know it ended in fire.
Fire,
The
Hmm.
second
ice.
cycle ended in ice. I'm
Right.
I'm just really curious about third through 9. What happened?
Well, we're
Well,
about finishing the
the,
fourth.
Yeah.
the Hopi elders say that we're at the end of the fourth world. Okay,
Oh.
those other worlds have not come to pass yet. Fifth through nine.
Okay.
We're at the end of the fourth, and I have a Hopi friend. He's in his 50s or so, and I said, "Well, when do you think the fourth world is going to end?" And he said, "Well, probably during my lifetime." So the Hopi are never specific about dates, or like the Maya
Right.
2012
Like
thing.
the
Right.
Mayans, they were. Yeah.
Yeah, and but the Hopi, if you ask the Hopi, well, when is the fourth world going to end? And they'll say, well, pretty soon, because things look pretty bad out there.
So, and what?
Uh,
And,
you know, but the third world. They're talking about the third world. That was destroyed by a great flood.
Yeah,
oh, I
I
just
knew
read
it.
Yeah, he wrote.
water.
Yeah, like I say,
And he's so
why
psychic.
aren't you not surprised?
Yeah, and of course, all different cultures,
Yes.
including Native American. The Sioux have a flood myth, and of course the Hopi do. And the Hopi say that they came across the Pacific Ocean on reed boats.
Oh, that's
And
scary.
they traveled. And my book, Star Shrines and Earthworks of the Desert Southwest, kind of brings some genetic evidence to bear on this, and some evidence saying that part of the Hopi people, at least some of the clans, came from the Western Pacific and sailed across the ocean on these reed boats.
Mm. That's that
Tiki
is
tiki
scary to
tiki
think
tiki
about.
tiki.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so how's it going to end in number 4?
Yeah. What's number 4?
Because we scared now.
Well, we've been going along a path, and it started out okay. Um, but we have all these signs that things are not going right.
Yeah.
There's so many different signs, like the gourd of ashes I mentioned,
Yep.
was World War II, and all these earthquakes and tsunamis and epidemics. You
And
hear about
tornadoes.
Ebola, just rearing its head. And
Right.
that's pretty scary stuff.
Earthquakes.
Swine flu, and the epidemics and all these floods all over the world, and droughts. The Southwest has been enduring, as you know,
Yes.
in if you're in California there, which
Yep.
I think you are.
Yeah,
We're pretty
like,
parched.
yeah.
And yeah, it's all these Hopi prophecies has predicted these massive climate change, shifts in climate. That's part of all the Hopi prophecy. For instance, they predicted that the sea would turn black and a lot of marine life would die.
Gosh.
In the summer of 2010, that happened with the Gulf oil
Yeah,
spill.
Gulf Over
Yep.
spill.
Well,
That's right.
that's part of the prophecy, right?
That's part of the Hopi
yeah. Well,
prophecy.
because the time gets away from us. A lot of people that's tuned in probably have never even heard of the Hopi prophecies. They've heard of the Mayans, but there are also 9 signs, correct?
Yeah.
Of the.
According to a certain prophecy called the White Feather Prophecy,
Uh-huh.
in the summer of 1958, there was a minister named David Young, and he was driving across Arizona, and he saw this old Hopi man walking along the road, and he decided to give him a ride. And this Hopi man was of the Bear Clan, which is one of the most spiritual clans of the Hopi. And he said that all his sons were dead, and he was dying, and he wanted to pass on these 9 particular signs that would signal the end of the fourth world. And so he told David Young, this young minister, these 9 particular signs. And the first one had to do with guns coming to the west. Okay,
Sticks with fire.
sticks with fire. They would strike their enemies with thunder. Okay. And the second sign was the spinning wheels filled with voices. I've tried to think about what this could be, and some have said like it's the spinning wheels of the wagons. You could see kind of whirring of the wheels, and other people have suggested the spinning wheels are the records
Yeah,
and the
LP
CDs
records and CDs.
and the CDs that
Yeah.
kind of have voices in them.
That's funny. Yeah. That makes
So
sense.
this is part of the Hopi prophecy. They also said that a beast with long horns that looked like a buffalo would come to the west, and of course the longhorn cattle came in
Oh, okay.
to the west.
That makes sense.
And this White Feather said that one of the prophecies would be snakes of iron would crisscross the land.
Railroad
Railroads.
tracks. Yeah.
Yeah, railroad tracks. Yeah, sure. And then a giant spider web would be across the land, be thrown across the land.
Electricity.
Yeah,
Telephone
electricity,
poles.
maybe the telegraph, telephone lines, and we have the World Wide Web. So a giant spider web
Ooh.
Right.
is encompassing our world now. And this is not just this was in 1958. These prophecies were brought forth,
Wow.
and they're much older than that. They're hundreds, centuries old at least. That these prophecies were received by these spiritual elders, and they would receive these prophecies intuitively. They would sit in these kivas, and these prophecies, these underground prayer chambers that I talked about before. They would receive these visions of the world to come. What the world would look like.
And number 6.
Yeah, give us number 6. Eddie's like
Well,
he's ready to get his
Oh,
like.
number 6, the rivers of stone making pictures in the sun.
What is that?
Rivers of stone making pictures
Pictures
in
in
the
the
sun.
sun.
Now, if you drive in the Southwest, you see, you see these mirages when you're driving along asphalt or concrete
Oh
roads,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
and these rivers of stone that you drive
Oh.
on.
Oh.
So
That's roads.
Okay.
these are roads, yeah.
Number 7.
Well, the seven I mentioned before, about the
Sea
sea
turning
turning
black.
black.
Oh god,
Okay.
that's
Secret
awful.
black. Okay.
Okay.
Then number 8. Oh, I'm getting all scared now.
Well, this kind of is part of my past because I used to be a hippie. they, they said that people with long hair and kind of back to earth ways, back to nature ways, would come out to the reservation and try to learn the ways of the native people. So there was, in the late 60s and early 70s, there was kind of a back to nature sort of thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people were leaving the cities, San Francisco and LA, and going to the reservations and trying to learn from the native people,
Hmm.
trying to learn the Indian ways. And they had Hopi had a prophecy that these people would come to them with this real long hair and these kind of libertine ways, and if, in some ways that the Hopi are very conservative type people, and they kind of there was a friction between the Hopis who were kind of invading their land. I mean the
Yeah.
hippies who were invading their land, and the Hopi conservative lifestyle. So they said that's number 8, the hippies, the hippie movement of the late 60s.
And then the big
Number
one,
9.
the big one, and this one I do have a question, and go ahead and tell us what it is. But it's about the blue star, and I have a question about that.
They said that a dwelling place in the heavens would crash to the earth and produce a blue star. Now, some people don't believe that the blue star is a real myth, and other people do. And there have been a lot of interpretations of what the blue star is.
Is that different than the Death Star?
Um, well, the blue star is a herald. It kind of forecasts the end of the fourth world. Now, the blue star Kachina, supposedly, when the blue star appears in the heavens, the blue star Kachina will take off his mask during a Kachina dance. And that's simply something that would never happen during a normal Kachina dance.
Hmm.
That would never it'd be like a priest taking off his vestments during mass, and throwing them
Wow.
on the floor or something like that.
Right.
It would just be heresy for a a um a man to remove his mask, because when he's doing this dance, he's actually becoming this kachina. He's transforming himself into a spirit being by wearing the mask, and the mask is not an object, but it's an animate being that the Hopi kind of offer food, give food offerings to, and rituals. They call them friends instead of actual objects, and just a mask. It's a friend. So that, and they put on this friend, and they become the spirit being.
Mm.
And if the Blue Star Kachina takes off his mask during one of these dances, that means the ceremonial cycle of the Hopi will end, and the world will be thrown out of balance.
Wow.
Because basically, the Hopi believe that there are two warrior twins that are stationed at each one of the poles. And those two warrior twins will leave their stations, and the world will begin to wobble.
Well,
And
it's starting to.
we're having some magnetic shifts right now. The magnetic north is wandering all over the place, I think. But a massive pole shift could result. If these two warrior twins left their stations, and the world would kind of go spinning out of control.
Before we get out of here, like we ask Clifford, we would love to maybe get some of your wisdom, or maybe even some of Grandfather Martin's wisdom of what he says that we can do as human beings to help this planet.
Well, the last time I saw Grandfather Martin, he said just keep going, keep praying, and keep staying close to the earth. We have to continue. We can't give up hope. We can't sink into despair, like a lot of people are doing, or being diverted by all the toys that we have, electronic toys
Right.
and so forth. We have to keep focused and have one heart instead of the two-hearted people that are only out for themselves. We got to look after each other, and be kind to each other, and support those that aren't as fortunate. And it's just taking care of your neighbor and
Right.
your brother and sister.
Gary, we want to offer you to come back because, again,
We're just getting
we just
started.
keep getting started,
Great.
and it's like so much information that you and Clifford had today for us, and we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me. It was
All right.
great to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gary.
Gary A. David, thank you, and we'll call you soon and hopefully have you back on.